For this week's project, I built a portable mini camera, and in this video, I'll show you how I built it. I think this is great for anyone looking to build a DIY project with a low-cost camera. So I'm using this to create time-lapse videos, but you could use it for all sorts of photo-based projects. This tiny camera module has an integrated driver, and it's really easy to use without an Arduino or Raspberry Pi. The camera sensor can take 1280 by 960 photos and captures video at 480p. So it's not an HD camera, but it's pretty decent for small projects. The module uses a microSD card to store data, and it has a maximum support of 32 gigs. So here's the parts I used to build this project. I'll have a full list in the learning guide linked below. The circuit works like this. The red and black wires are for power and ground. When the white wire touches ground for a half a second, it takes a photo and saves it to the SD card. I'll use an Adafruit Trinket to trigger the camera every few seconds. A 100 mAh LiPo battery will power the circuit for about an hour, so I'll need a LiPo backpack so that we can recharge the battery over USB. Then we'll use a small slide switch to power the circuit on and off. In the code, we can define a digital number as the trigger. In the setup, we'll initialize pin mode as an output. Then we'll set it high using digital write. In the loop, we'll use digital write to set the pin low. A delay will hold down the trigger for about a half a second, then we can set the pin high for 5 seconds. And that's pretty much it. This will keep looping to make the camera take a photo every 5 seconds. We'll use the Arduino IDE to program the Adafruit Trinket and upload the code using a data USB cable. To house the electronics, I designed an enclosure and modeled each component so that I could make a friction fit mounting points. For a tutorial on how I designed it, you can watch my layer by layer video. I have the files available for free to download and modify. I 3D printed the two-piece enclosure using PLA filament on the Micro M3D printer. But if you don't have access to a 3D printer, you could always try using a 3D printing service. The parts printed nicely, flat on the bed, without having to use any support material. To start this project, I cut 2 pieces of wires for the slide switch. I stripped the ends of each wire and tinned the tips using a bit of solder. I clipped one of the pins from the slide switch and connected the wires to the remaining 2. Next, I needed to cut a trace on the LiPo backpack to enable the power switch. Then I soldered the 2 wires from the slide switch to the LiPo backpack. I'll need 3 more pieces of wire for connecting the LiPo backpack to the Trinket. I cut, stripped, and tinned the tips of each wire and connected them to the pins on the LiPo backpack. Now I can connect those wires to the Adafruit Trinket. The wires on the camera module were a little long, so I cut them short. Then I soldered them up to connect it to the Adafruit Trinket. I plugged in the battery and flipped the switch to test out the circuit. Now I can fit the components into the case. I started with the slide switch, then the LiPo backpack, followed by the Trinket, and then the camera module. And the battery just rests on top of the Trinket. With everything now in place, I can fit the cover over the case. I designed these little nubs into the lid so that the 2 pieces would snap together and stay together. The cutout for the camera lens fitted nicely, and the SD card has enough clearance to pop in and out. I also made it so the slide switch is easy to get to. I think it's a nice little package and probably one of the smallest I've ever made. So here's what the image quality looks like. All of the camera settings are pretty much on auto, so I didn't adjust any exposure settings. So this is what the image quality looks like without any post-processing. It's not too bad. And here's a time lapse of me actually editing this video, which is kind of meta, but this was mostly for testing indoors. If you're looking for a high quality DIY camera project, be sure to check out our wearable Raspberry Pi Zero camera build. I hope this project inspires you to make something and maybe even get into 3D printing and DIY electronics. Hey, if you like this build, you can let me know in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching. For more DIY projects, be sure to subscribe to the Adafruit channel. Also, don't forget to check out our playlist for past projects.